They threw her into the snow to die. The Lycan king chose her instead. Betrayed by those she once trusted, abandoned by the very court that had sworn loyalty to her family, she stumbled through the blizzard, hoping against hope that her lungs would last, that her legs would carry her farther than the cold wanted. Her breath came in short, visible bursts, mingling with the icy wind that cut across the clearing. She had been thrown out into the snow like a shadowed memory, accused of treason she had never committed. The words of her accusers still echoed in her mind, sharp and cruel. "She seeks the throne for herself," they had whispered. "She cannot be trusted. She will betray us all." Ilara's heart ached not from the cold alone, but from the bitter sting of betrayal. She had once believed in the loyalty of her people, in the honor of her family. Now she was alone, her only companions the snow, the wind, and the dark trees looming around her like silent sentinels. As night fell, the forest seemed to grow taller, darker, as if it was swallowing her whole. Her legs faltered and she sank to her knees, the snow biting through her skirts. It was then she heard it, a soft, low howl carried through the frozen night, deep and resonant like the call of something ancient and powerful. She froze, fear pricking at the edges of her mind. Wolves were not uncommon in these woods, but this was no ordinary pack. The howl carried authority, almost intelligence. Ilara pulled her shawl closer, wrapping herself as best she could. She wanted to call out, to beg for help, but her voice was gone, swallowed by the cold. She shut her eyes, willing herself to survive, to find a way through the blizzard. Then she felt it, a presence, massive and steady, moving through the snow toward her. When her eyes opened again, she saw him. The figure was tall, his movements precise and powerful, almost unreal. A cloak of shadow seemed to cling to him, blending with the night, yet his eyes, golden and fierce, shone through like molten light. He was a man and yet not quite human. His shoulders were broad, his posture commanding, every step sure as the snow crunched beneath him. He stopped a few paces away, regarding her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "You should not be here," he said, his voice low and smooth, carrying a weight that seemed to make the snow still. I was cast out," she stammered, shivering. "Left to die." He studied her, head tilted slightly as if weighing her very soul. "Cast out by whom?" "Those who once called me sister, friend, allies," she said, her voice breaking. The wind whipped at her hair and clothes, and she struggled to rise. "They want me dead." The figure moved suddenly, swift and silent, closing the distance in a few long strides. He extended a hand, massive yet careful, and lifted her from the snow. She gasped at the warmth of his grip, at the strange, almost electric energy that pulsed through his touch. "Do not fear," he said, though his eyes betrayed little emotion. "You will not die tonight. Not while I am here." Ilara wanted to recoil, to scream, to demand who he was and why he was helping her, but the cold, the fear, and something she could not name held her silent. She could only let him carry her, moving through the forest with an ease and strength that seemed unnatural. She noticed how the wolves around him did not approach. They kept their distance, watching with reverent eyes as though he were their master. After what felt like hours, they reached a cliffside clearing where a fortress of stone and dark timber rose from the mountainside. Torches flickered along its walls, casting long, dancing shadows. Snow swirled around its towers like mist, and a sense of power radiated from the place, strong and unyielding. This is your home?" Ilara asked, trying to steady her voice, though she felt the weakness in her limbs. "Mine," he corrected, the word sharp but not unkind. "And now it shelters you." He led her inside through heavy doors carved with strange runes. The interior was vast and dimly lit, with shadows stretching across stone floors. Fires burned in great hearths, casting a warm glow that made the chill retreat from her bones. "You must rest," he said. "You have traveled far, and the snow has taken more than your strength." Ilara sank into a chair near the fire, her body trembling. She dared not ask his name, though she burned to know it. Instead, she simply watched him as he moved across the room, silent and deliberate, every motion full of grace and latent power. "Who are you?" she finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. He paused, one hand resting on the mantel above the hearth. His eyes met hers, steady, unwavering. "I am Kalen," he said, "king of the Lycans, guardian of the forest you nearly perished in, and now the one who has chosen to save you." Alara's heart quickened, the Lycan king. The legend spoke of him as a creature of both awe and fear, a ruler who could command the wolves and bend the forest to his will. Few humans had ever met him and lived to tell the tale. Yet here he was, standing before her, not as a monster, but as a protector. I don't understand," she said, struggling to find words. "Why would you save me?" Kalen's expression softened slightly, though only the faintest shadow of warmth touched his golden eyes. "Because you were not meant to die in the snow. Because I choose whom I will save, and you chose to survive." Alara looked down, ashamed that she had allowed herself to falter so completely. Yet, under his gaze, she felt something stir, a strange comfort, a fragile sense of hope she had not felt in days. "Rest," Kalen said again, gesturing to the chair. "Tomorrow the world will be different. Tonight you are safe here." She nodded, closing her eyes, letting exhaustion overtake her. The fire's warmth seeped into her frozen limbs, and for the first time in hours, she felt the snow's sharp edge fade into memory. Yet sleep was uneasy, her dreams filled with shadows and whispers of the court that had betrayed her. When she awoke, dawn had begun to paint the sky in muted shades of pink and gray. Kalen stood nearby, silent, watching her as she sat up. The room smelled of wood smoke and something faintly floral, a strange but comforting scent. "You must eat," he said, producing a simple tray of bread, fruit, and water. She accepted it, grateful but cautious. "You do not trust me," he observed, as though reading her thoughts. Alara hesitated. I have been betrayed before. I do not know how to trust anymore." Kalen nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. "Then let us begin slowly. Trust is not given. It is earned, and sometimes it is demanded by circumstances." The day passed in silence, broken only by the distant howls of the forest. Alara explored the fortress cautiously, discovering vast halls, rooms filled with books and artifacts, and strange markings that hinted at magic older than any human kingdom. Kalen watched her from a distance, never intrusive, but always present. As night fell again, the wind howled louder, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. Alara sensed that this fortress, this king, held secrets darker than the snow outside. Yet she also felt a pull, a fascination she could not deny. That night, as the moon rose high, Kalen came to her room. He did not speak at first, merely standing in the doorway, a silent sentinel. "Why?" Alara asked, the word barely audible. "Why save me? Why care?" Kalen stepped closer, the firelight catching the sharp angles of his face. "Because," he said softly, "I do not allow the snow to claim what I choose to protect, and you have chosen to endure to survive. That is why." Alara's breath caught. She had never felt seen like this, not by a friend, not by a stranger. And yet she also felt the weight of his words, the unspoken truth that survival came at a price. "Will you let me stay?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. Kalen's golden eyes softened just a fraction, and he extended his hand. "Stay," he said, "if you dare." As she took his hand, a strange warmth spread through her chest, mingling with the lingering fear and uncertainty. The snowstorm outside raged on, wild and relentless, yet inside, a fragile spark of hope began to grow. Alara did not yet know the full depth of Kalen's world, the power he wielded, or the secrets the forest held. But she knew one thing: she had been chosen, and nothing, not snow, not betrayal, not even fear, would take that from her. The fire flickered, casting long shadows across the room, and outside, the howls of the forest echoed through the night. Somewhere in the darkness, the snow waited, patient and unyielding. But for now, in the heart of the fortress, Two souls had crossed paths, one seeking survival, the other seeking something he could not yet name. And so the Lycan king and the betrayed noblewoman began a story that would stretch across snow and shadow, power and longing, fear and hope. A story that would test them, challenge them, and perhaps transform them forever. The night deepened. The snow continued to fall. And Kaelin, the Lycan king, watched her sleep, silently promising, "Not tonight. You will not die tonight." The next morning, the snow had softened into a gentle, silvery blanket shimmering under the pale sunlight. Lady Alara rose slowly, her body still aching from the night spent on a simple cot near the fire. The fortress was quiet, almost too quiet, yet the walls themselves seemed alive, whispering secrets from a time she could not comprehend. Kaelin did not appear immediately. When she ventured out into the great hall, she found him standing at the tall windows, looking out over the forest. The golden sunlight glinted against the frost-covered trees, and the howls of distant wolves drifted on the wind like a haunting song. "You are awake," he said, not turning to face her. His voice carried the same weight as before, deep and calm, yet layered with an undercurrent of curiosity. "I am," she replied, cautious, unsure if she should speak freely. "I thank you again for saving me." "I still don't understand why." Kaelin finally turned, his eyes meeting hers. They held a storm inside, fierce and untamed, yet there was a shadow of something softer beneath the golden light. "Why do people save strangers?" he asked quietly. "Sometimes it is instinct. Sometimes it is because something in them calls for it, and sometimes it is because they see strength where others see weakness." Alara met his gaze, her chest tight with an emotion she could not name. Strength. He had said it to her as if he had seen something in her, even when she had believed herself broken. She had never been regarded like this, not as a noble, not as a daughter, not as a human among her kind. The day began with lessons she had not expected. Kaelin guided her through the fortress, showing her hidden chambers, rooms filled with books older than her kingdom, artifacts that shimmered with faint magic, and corridors that twisted and climbed like the roots of some ancient tree. "You must understand this place," he said. "These walls, these halls, they are more than stone. They are alive. They remember every footstep, every whisper, every choice made within them echoes beyond these walls." Alara listened, fascinated. She had grown up in palaces and castles, but none had been like this. Every corner seemed to breathe with history, power, and danger. Yet, as she moved through the halls, she realized that Kaelin was not merely showing her the fortress. He was showing her himself, his mind, his world. Lunch was a simple affair: bread, fruit, and roasted vegetables. Kaelin ate sparingly, his eyes never leaving her as she ate. Alara felt awkward under his gaze. She was used to polite glances and courtly distance, but this was different. There was a weight to it, an intensity that made her stomach flutter with both fear and fascination. "You are thinking of your court," Kaelin said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. Alara froze. Yes," she admitted, embarrassed. "They betrayed me. I cannot forgive them, but I cannot stop thinking about them either." Kaelin nodded slowly. "The past has a way of haunting us," he said. "It lingers, shapes us, but it does not have to define us. You survived because you chose life, not because they spared you. Remember that." Alara looked at him, wondering if he had always been this perceptive. She did not yet know the depth of his power, the reach of his mind, but she felt a strange comfort in his words. For the first time in many nights, she allowed herself a small spark of hope. As the day passed, Kaelin led her outside to the cliffs near the fortress. From there the forest stretched endlessly, silvered with frost, mysterious and dangerous. Wolves prowled below, silent, their eyes glowing like amber jewels. Kaelin stood close to her, his presence protective yet commanding. "Do you see them?" he asked, gesturing to the wolves. "They respect strength. They respect leadership. They sense fear, weakness, and truth. You must learn to move as if the forest itself watches you, because in many ways it does." Alara swallowed, the wind tugging at her hair. She had always thought of wolves as dangerous animals, but now she saw them differently. Guardians, companions, fierce yet loyal when treated with understanding. She looked at Kalen, wondering if he was like them in some ways, a creature of instinct and power yet capable of deep loyalty. "You are like them," she said softly, "strong and wise." Kalen's eyes flickered, and for a moment a faint smile touched his lips. Perhaps. But even the strongest must be tested, even the wisest must learn restraint. The lesson came quickly. As they walked along the forest edge, a rival clan of Lycans emerged, challenging Kalen's authority with a display of strength and intimidation. The air was thick with tension. Alara's heart pounded as Kalen moved forward, calm yet commanding, his voice cutting through the cold like fire. "Leave now," he said, "or face the consequences." The rival clan hesitated, bowing slightly, yet the threat in Kalen's stance was undeniable. Alara watched him, amazed by the power he wielded with such precision, yet also by the restraint he exercised. There was no cruelty in his command, only authority, tempered with wisdom. When the rivals retreated, Kalen turned to her, his gaze intense. "Do you understand now?" he asked. "Power is not merely strength. It is knowing when to act, when to wait, when to protect, and when to strike. You will need this knowledge whether you wish it or not." Alara nodded, the weight of his words sinking into her bones. She had survived betrayal and snowstorms, yet she realized this was only the beginning. The forest, the fortress, and Kalen himself were all teachers, and she was a student in a world far harsher and deeper than she had ever imagined. As night fell, Kalen led her back to the fortress. The sky was dark, the stars obscured by thick clouds, yet the snow still glimmered under the moonlight. Inside, the warmth of the fire welcomed her, yet a strange tension lingered between them. Alara could not deny the pull she felt toward him, nor the curiosity that gnawed at her. "You are thinking of the past again," Kalen said, breaking the silence. Alara looked at him, startled. Yes, I cannot help it." "You must learn to focus," he said gently but firmly. "Your survival depends on it, and soon, more will test you than snow and betrayal." That night she could not sleep. Thoughts of the court, the blizzard, and Kalen's eyes tangled in her mind. There was an intimacy in his presence she had not expected, a connection that frightened her as much as it drew her in. She wanted to ask him more about himself, his power, his past, but a part of her feared the answers. Kalen appeared at the doorway again, silent, watching her. "Do you wish to know the truth?" he asked softly. Alara hesitated. "The truth about what?" "About me," he said. "About the blood that runs through my veins, the curse that shadows my family, and the forest that answers to me. You must understand it if you wish to survive here. You must understand me if you wish to stand beside me." Alara felt a chill, but not from the cold. I want to understand," she whispered, "even if it frightens me." Kalen stepped closer, his golden eyes reflecting the firelight. "Then you must be ready," he said. "For some truths will test your courage, some truths will test your heart, and some may change everything you think you know." She nodded, feeling the weight of his words. Fear, curiosity, longing, they all surged together, leaving her breathless. She realized that the forest, the fortress, and Kalen were all part of a world she could no longer escape. And yet, she also realized that she no longer wished to escape. The night deepened. Outside, the wolves howled, a haunting chorus that echoed across the mountains. Inside, Alara sat by the fire waiting, knowing that her life had changed forever. Kalen had chosen her, but that choice came with shadows, secrets, and challenges she could not yet see. As the fire flickered and the snow whispered against the fortress walls, Alara understood one thing clearly. She was no longer just a survivor cast into the cold. She was a part of something far larger, far older, and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And Kalen, the Lycan king, watched her with a gaze that held both warning and promise. The night was long, the forest restless, and the snow continued to fall. But in the fortress a bond had begun, fragile, tense, and unspoken. A bond that would carry them through the trials to come, the curses to face, and the truths that would change everything. And somewhere deep inside, Alara felt the first spark of a dangerous, beautiful hope. The morning came pale and quiet, a thin veil of frost sparkling over the fortress. Lady Alara stood by the window in her chamber, watching the mist swirl among the trees far below. The forest seemed alive, a breathing, whispering thing that stretched endlessly in all directions. Her mind wandered, filled with questions about the world she had stepped into and about the Lycan king who had saved her. Kalen entered the room without knocking, as was his habit. He moved like a shadow, silent yet commanding, his golden eyes fixed on her. "You are restless," he said, almost a statement rather than a question. "I am thinking," she replied cautiously, "about everything. About you, about this place, about the forest, about the curse you mentioned last night." Kalen's expression darkened slightly, the shadow of his past pressing against the present. He came closer and rested one hand lightly on the windowsill beside her. "It is time you saw more than stone walls and snow. You must see the mountains, the ruins of my ancestors, and the truths that haunt my bloodline." Alara's heart pounded. She had survived betrayal and blizzards, but this was unknown. Yet something in his gaze, a promise that she would not face it alone, gave her courage. By mid-morning, they had mounted 2 black horses, their coats gleaming despite the frost. The wind bit at her cheeks and whipped through her hair as they rode through the forest. The wolves followed at a distance, silent and watchful. The ride was long, the paths steep and hidden among cliffs and twisted trees, yet Kalen's presence beside her steadied her, giving her strength she did not know she possessed. Finally, they arrived at the ruins of an ancient temple, built into the mountainside and half swallowed by snow. The stones were etched with runes that glimmered faintly, and the air thrummed with a power older than any human memory. Kalen dismounted first, gesturing for Alara to follow. "This place holds the history of my family," he said, "and the curse that shadows it." Alara's breath caught. She had heard legends of curses tied to bloodlines, but she had never imagined witnessing one so closely. She stepped carefully among the frozen stones, sensing a strange energy that made the hair on her arms rise. Kalen stopped at a carving on the wall, ancient and jagged. "Every lichen of my line carries a burden," he said, tracing the runes with his fingers. "It is said that any bond we form with a human is shadowed by it. If the bond is strong, it awakens the curse. If the bond is broken, we are doomed to loneliness and rage. I have spent centuries avoiding it, yet—" He turned his eyes to her, golden and fierce, yet vulnerable. "You were brought to me, Alara, by fate, but with that fate comes danger." Alara felt the weight of his words settle over her. She wanted to ask questions, to know more, but the truth in his eyes silenced her. She realized then that this world, the forest, the wolves, and Kalen himself were all entwined in a delicate balance of power, trust, and risk. "Why show me this?" she asked softly. "Why tell me now?" "Because soon you will have to choose," he said. "And I cannot face what is coming alone. You will be part of it whether you wish it or not. You must understand." For hours, Kalen explained the history of his line, the curses, the battles fought not only with enemies but with themselves. He showed her the ancient stones, the sigils, and the relics of power, all while teaching her to sense the subtle shifts in the forest and the wolves' behavior. Alara absorbed it all, her mind stretching to understand, to survive, to protect herself and him. As dusk fell, they returned to the fortress, weary but changed. Alara noticed a new tension in the air, a quiet awareness that something greater was stirring. The forest outside was restless, the wolves uneasy. Kalen walked beside her, silent, his eyes scanning the shadows. That night they sat by the fire in the great hall. Alara watched Kalen as he polished an ancient blade, its edge gleaming in the firelight. There was a solemnity to his movements, a quiet discipline that seemed to demand respect. "You carry the weight of the past," she said softly. "Does it ever frighten you?" Kalen looked at her, the firelight reflecting in his golden eyes. "Fear is a companion," he said. "It reminds me that I am alive. It reminds me of what I must protect and what I cannot lose. But fear does not control me. Never that." Alara felt a shiver that was not from the cold. The strength in his words and in him was overwhelming. Yet she also sensed a deep loneliness, a void that no power or forest could fill. She wanted to reach for him to bridge the distance, but she hesitated, unsure if he would allow it, or if she even dared. "You are brave," Kalen said suddenly, breaking her thoughts. "Bravery is rare in humans. It is rarer still to meet one who can endure not only the forest, but the truths that live within me." Alara's heart quickened. She had always believed herself strong, but here, in the presence of a king, a Lycan, and a man who carried centuries of burden, she felt both fragile and fierce. There was a pull between them, quiet and potent, a tension neither dared fully acknowledge. The next day brought new challenges. Kalen led her into the forest, deeper than she had ever ventured, to a hidden glade where the air shimmered with unseen magic. Wolves circled at a distance, silent guardians of the place. "You must learn to move with awareness," Kalen instructed. "Not all threats are visible, not all dangers roar. Some whisper, some hide in plain sight. This is a lesson in trust and in control." Alara followed his instructions carefully, moving slowly, sensing the subtle changes in wind, snow, and shadows. Kalen observed her, silently correcting, guiding, and teaching. She could feel the power of the forest responding to her presence, a delicate harmony she had never known existed. "You have a gift," he said finally after hours of training. "A connection to life, to the forest, and perhaps to me. But gifts are double-edged. They bring both opportunity and risk." Alara looked at him, curiosity mingled with fear. "Why me?" she asked. "Why now?" Kalen's eyes darkened. "Because the curse stirs, because choices must be made before the forest decides for you. Because in all my years few have stirred something in me that demands protection. You have done that, whether you know it or not." Her chest tightened. The words, the intensity, the weight of what he said, it all left her breathless. She realized that she did not simply admire him or fear him. She was drawn to him in ways she could not yet name. And she was aware, too, that this bond, as he had said, was dangerous. Night fell again, bringing with it a restless wind. Alara found herself wandering the corridors of the fortress, unable to sleep. Her mind replayed the events of the day, the lessons, and the quiet moments with Kalen. She sensed the weight of history pressing down, the presence of the forest watching, waiting, and she understood that her life had changed irrevocably. Kalen appeared in the hall silently, as always. "You do not rest," he observed. I cannot," she admitted. "So much is happening. I am trying to understand it all, but I am afraid I will fail." "Fear is not weakness," he said softly. "It is a signal that something matters. That is the first step toward strength. You have it in you to endure, to face what comes. But you must trust, even when it is hard." Alara felt the pull of his words, a mixture of reassurance and challenge. She wanted to speak, to ask about his past, the curse, and the forest, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded, letting his presence anchor her. The night was long, and the wind howled outside, a chorus of warning and welcome. Alara knew that the next days would bring more than lessons in survival or strength. They would bring choices, tests of heart and courage, and a deeper understanding of Kalen, the Lycan king, and the ancient power that bound him. Before sleep finally claimed her, she allowed herself one thought, fragile and tentative. Perhaps, in this dark and frozen world, there was a place for her, not just as a survivor, but as someone who mattered. Someone Kalen might trust. Someone who might change the path of the curse, the forest, and the king himself. Outside, the wolves howled. The snow whispered. And deep within the fortress, two hearts, one burdened by power, one broken by betrayal, began a journey neither fully understood, but both could not turn away from. Alara's eyes closed, yet in her dreams she saw the forest alive, the wolves moving silently, and Kaelin's golden eyes watching over her. She understood, even in sleep, that their story was only beginning. And when dawn came, the shadows of the past would demand answers, and hearts would be tested like never before. The forest was restless. Snow swirled in great sheets, driven by wind that howled like the cries of unseen spirits. Lady Alara stood at the edge of the cliff, looking down at the frozen valley below. Wolves moved through the trees like shadows, their golden eyes gleaming in the faint light. Her heart pounded, but it was no longer the fear of betrayal or snow. It was the thrill and terror of what was to come. Kaelin stood behind her, silent and watchful, his presence a shield against the dangers that approached. He had spent countless years preparing for this moment, yet the storm within him was no less intense. The curse that had haunted his bloodline for centuries stirred in the cold air, a silent threat that promised pain if left unchecked. "Alara," he said, his voice deep and steady though edged with concern, "today you will see why I could not let the snow claim you. Today the forest, the curse, and my enemies converge. You must stand with me, not behind me." Alara swallowed, her fingers tightening around the hilt of a small dagger he had given her for protection. I will," she said, her voice firm though her chest fluttered with nerves. "I will not falter." Kaelin's golden eyes softened just slightly and he reached for her hand. "Good. Courage is not the absence of fear but the strength to face it." Together, they descended into the valley. The snow deepened and every step felt heavier, the cold seeping through even their warm clothing. Shadows flickered among the trees, wolves, spirits, and perhaps other forces unseen by human eyes. Alara felt the pulse of the forest beneath her feet, the energy of life and magic intertwined, and she understood that the land itself was alive, aware, and judging their actions. Suddenly, a chilling howl shattered the air. A rival Lycan clan emerged from the tree line, their eyes burning with challenge. They were not merely seeking to fight Kaelin, they sought to break him, to claim the forest, and to use the curse against him. Kaelin moved like lightning, stepping in front of Alara. "Stay close," he said, his voice commanding yet gentle. "Do not act until I give the signal. Trust your instincts, but trust me more." Alara nodded, heart hammering, and felt the strange courage that had been growing within her for days. She had survived betrayal, snowstorms, and fear. She could survive this. The rival Lycans circled, their movements precise, dangerous. Kaelin's eyes glowed faintly golden, a shimmer of his power manifesting. Wolves at his side responded instantly, forming a protective barrier around him and Alara. It was a dance of strength, strategy, and instinct, the forest itself bending to Kaelin's will. Alara realized then that she was no longer merely a spectator. She sensed the movements of the wolves, the shifting wind, the energy in the snow and trees. She could anticipate, react, and act with Kaelin, not behind him. For the first time she felt truly alive, her senses sharp, her heart aligned with the rhythm of the forest. The leader of the rival clan stepped forward, a towering Lycan with eyes like fire. "Kaelin," he growled, "your reign ends today. The curse will consume you and all who follow you." Kaelin's voice was calm, yet carried authority that made the challengers pause. "The curse does not choose without reason," he said. "It tests, but it also rewards, and I have chosen today we face it together." Alara felt the words resonate deep within her. The curse, the power, the danger, it was all real, yet it no longer terrified her as it had. She had a choice, flee and survive, or stand and fight with Kaelin, and she chose him. The battle began quietly at first, a careful dance of wolves, Lycans, and magic. Kaelin moved with precision, a blur of power and grace, protecting Alara and guiding her through the fight. She dodged, countered, and assisted when she could, her instincts heightened by the training and lessons he had given her. The rival clan struck with cunning, seeking to use the curse against Kaelin. The air thickened with tension as shadows shifted, and Alara could feel the weight of destiny pressing down upon them. Kaelin's eyes glowed brighter, his power rising to meet the threat, yet he remained controlled, never cruel, never careless. At the height of the struggle, Kaelin faltered for a brief moment. The curse surged, threatening to overwhelm him. Alara saw it, and without hesitation she stepped forward. "You are not alone," she whispered. "We face this together." Her words, her courage, her unwavering trust, they broke the hold of the curse, not by magic but by choice. Kaelin's power surged, not destructive but protective, and the rival clan faltered, sensing that they could not break the bond that now linked Kaelin and Alara. The snow swirled around them, the forest alive with energy, and slowly the battle ended. The rivals retreated, their challenge unmet. Wolves howled in triumph, circling Kaelin and Alara as guardians and allies. The air settled, crisp and quiet, yet charged with the remnants of power and magic. Kaelin turned to her, his golden eyes soft, almost luminous in the pale light. "You saved me," he said quietly, awe and respect in his tone. "Not with strength alone, but with courage, heart, and trust. You have changed the course of this curse and of my life." Alara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief, pride, and something far deeper. I could not have done it alone," she said. "You guided me, taught me, and trusted me. That made all the difference." For a long moment they simply stood together in the snow, surrounded by the forest and the wolves, two souls bound not only by survival but by trust, loyalty, and a deep, unspoken connection. Kaelin stepped closer, the faint glow of his power mingling with the firelight of the distant fortress. "Alara," he said softly, "you are no longer the one thrown into the snow. You are part of this world, part of me, and part of the choice that will shape the future." "Do you understand what that means?" She met his gaze, her own eyes steady. "I understand, and I accept it. Whatever comes, I will face it with you." He reached out, taking her hand in his, a gesture both protective and intimate. The warmth of his touch mingled with the cold of the snow, a reminder that strength and vulnerability could coexist. "Then we face the future together," he said. "The forest, the curse, the challenges, all of it." As they turned to return to the fortress, the sun broke through the clouds, scattering light across the snow and trees. The world felt vast, alive, and full of possibility. Alara felt it too, the sense that, despite betrayal, storms, and curses, she had found a place where she belonged, a place where she could grow, protect, and love without fear. Inside the fortress, the fires burned brightly, welcoming them back. The wolves padded silently through the halls, guardians of both the forest and the bond that had been forged. Kaelin moved beside Alara, silent but attentive, a king not only of power but of heart. That night they sat together by the fire, the shadows of the hall dancing across the walls. Alara leaned slightly toward Kaelin, the bond between them unspoken yet undeniable. "Do you think the curse will ever truly leave you?" she asked softly. Kaelin's eyes softened, distant yet warm. "Perhaps not," he said. "Some burdens remain, as do some truths, but the curse no longer controls me, and neither will it control us. What matters is what we choose together." Alara nodded, her heart swelling with a quiet strength. "Then we will choose well," she said. Outside, the forest was calm for the first time in days. The wolves rested in the snow, their golden eyes still alert, yet peaceful. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of renewal and promise. Alara felt the pulse of the land, the power of the forest, and the presence of Kaelin beside her. And in that moment she understood fully. Survival had led her here, betrayal had shaped her, and courage had transformed her. She was no longer simply a victim of the snow or the court. She was a part of something larger, something ancient and powerful, something alive with trust, strength, and love. Kaelin watched her silently, a faint smile touching his lips. The Lycan king who had once carried only shadows and curses now carried hope, and perhaps, for the first time in centuries, a companion who could share both the burden and the future. The snow outside glittered like silver, the forest breathing quietly, and two souls, one strong, one brave, stood together at the edge of what was past and what was yet to come. The story of survival, choice, and love had reached its climax, yet the bond forged in the snow and shadows promised more, a future shaped by courage, trust, and the quiet magic that existed between two hearts willing to face the world together. And in the silence of the fortress, amid the whispering snow and the watchful wolves, Alara and Kaelin found what they had both unknowingly sought: redemption, hope, and a love that neither snow, curse, nor shadow could ever destroy. The night passed peacefully, and as dawn broke again, it brought light, warmth, and the first promise of spring. The forest stirred with life, the wolves howled softly, and the fortress, ancient and enduring, held two hearts bound by choice, trust, and destiny. And so Lady Alara, once cast into the snow to die, and Kaelin, the Lycan king, chosen by fate and by each other, began a new chapter, one where courage, love, and trust would lead the way, shaping both the forest and the hearts that ruled it.